Well, I think that concept is flawed as well, honestly. And we're still really trying to figure out, what ApoE genetics mean. The biggest concern around them has been that if you have what's called a double ApoE4, that, you're at increased risk for Alzheimer's disease, increased risk for heart disease, and that, it's been put forth that you're in some way, abnormally susceptible to saturated fat. But if we step back, it really doesn't make sense for that to be the case. Genetics don't really change quickly across a population. So ApoE4 would have survived in the population at a time when humans were eating primarily saturated fat. Because for most of our existence as human beings, we ate primarily saturated fat. And so I do have a number of patients that do have, the double four, ApoE4, and they're doing these diets and we're monitoring them closely. And they don't seem to be, developing accelerated heart disease in my experience thus far. So I don't think, it's really the whole story as we've been told that it is. Some people, the adaptation to a carnivore diet might take a little bit of finesse. And, some people, when they first try it, it doesn't exactly agree with them. And we might have to play around with things. But I'm really yet to find a person that, for some reason couldn't do a carnivore diet or, whatever conditions got worse on a carnivore diet. And, I am always kind of a little cautious about this. I'm always on the lookout for it because, I say to myself, it kind of sounds crazy, every condition that people come to me with, and they're like, well, can a carnivore diet help this? And I'm like, well, it can't help everything, right? But lo and behold, I usually will get online and I'll go to some of the communities and I'll see what people are reporting. And most of the time you can find someone who says, yes, this got better on a carnivore diet. So my default these days is basically to tell people, the only way we're going to really know if you're going to get better or not on a carnivore diet is to try a carnivore diet. And I'm also open and honest with people. And I say, most people don't need to be on a carnivore diet. I think there are certain conditions that, yes, carnivore diet is very necessary. And these are a lot of the autoimmune conditions, people with bad gut problems. Those are the people that I'm like, you need to be on a strict carnivore diet, at least for a while. Other people, I just want them to understand it's an option. And, I say, let's give it a try, give it 30 days, give it 60 days, see how you feel. And at that point, it's almost universal that if the person does it and they're able to adhere to it, they feel better after 30 or 60 days. And then it's like, do you want to stick with it? Do you not? Do you want to add back a few things selectively, which some of them do? And we do that carefully and they're okay with it, so.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, our practice uses carnivore as an elimination diet and for the same population that you're mentioning. And for some people, they have to go strict because they're trying to figure out, is diet part of my inflammation? And so I think that totally makes sense. And then as you heal, if you want to add some other stuff back in moderation, then maybe it's okay, but everyone's individualized.
Yeah, so we have seen some cases where coronary artery calcium scores decrease.
Okay.
And that's very controversial to say, but, I've seen it. Is all I can say. Okay. And there's always question, understand that if you get two coronary artery calcium scans, even if you get them done on the same machine, one right after each other, there's variance, like there is in every measurement. And so 5-10% variance, you could probably chalk up to, just a difference in technique. But I've seen people now that, have 15-20% lowering of their CAC score. I don't see people go from 1,000 to 0, but I think you can lower this some. More important, though, is just stop it from getting worse. Again, we have a lot of data to show that, when you look at serial coronary artery calcium scanning over time, the average progression is about 15 to 20% per year.
Wow.
And we have data that if your score goes up by less than that, if it doesn't progress that quickly, that no matter what your absolute score is, it puts you into a lower risk category. So, the way that I utilize coronary artery calcium scanning in my practice is most of my patients, we get their kind of baseline scan when they come into the practice, and then we get a scan a year later. And what we're looking for is that score hasn't gone up. And like I said, we've seen a few cases where it's gone down. And for the most part, if they've addressed their insulin resistance, if they've been able to reverse their insulin resistance, if we eliminate other sources of inflammation, we see that the score doesn't progress.